Sheriff Holston watched his wife die from poisoning when she went outside, but now he is going outside himself. What will he find when he goes out? He seems like a good man, but why would he do this when he must know it means death? And why does an engineer in the Down Deep think that he has lied to her? Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Mark and I are discussing the second episode of the mysterious underground Apple TV series, Silo. So spoilers ahead. And if you want to see through our mysteries, just be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. And with that, you know what? I'll actually get this out of the way just so that we're not distracting you and or audience with the words on this. I've got my Silo mug, as we all know. In the silo, they don't have a bunch of machines making things, so a lot of things are handmade. And here is today's Silo mug. We've got the Silo weather report for the next 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Oof. Man, I hate Mondays. Am I right? Somebody's got a case of the Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays.
Right. Just a friendly little reminder that you shouldn't say, I want to go out. Which reminds me...
You just said it.
Why don't we talk about... I just said it.
You gotta go out. You gotta leave now. Right now, you gotta go right out.
Why don't we talk about the outside?
Okay. So, this outside...
Yes. They're really teasing it out, aren't they? Like, we've seen 2 episodes, and it's all leading up to them going outside, and there's like 5 minutes between the 2 of them. Okay.
What did we see? Like, how did we see the outside? I am itching, because I have so much...
If you are itching, then so am I. And
I know.
I think I might have seen some of the same things that you saw.
So...
Does it have to do with birds?
No, actually.
No.
Oh. No. So...
Okay, I want to hear what you've got.
All right, so we only saw the outside where it was all pretty through his visor.
Through his visor.
We never saw it outside of the visor. We never saw him.
When he took his helmet off, it was like the shots were super in close, so you can only see his face, and what little is in his face is super bright and washed out. So it's like white. I could maybe see the silhouette of the tree, but I couldn't tell if it was like the bottom part where there aren't leaves, or does it not have leaves?
Well, so the bright light behind him, is that the sun from like the beauty outside? Or I think they purposefully made it so it looked like when he has his helmet off, washed out behind him, can't tell what figures are behind him, because the figure could have been where the sensor is as well.
Right. Yep.
Everything was so hard to tell, and I think they deliberately do that. So the question is, why did he see beautiful outside?
Maybe he's not actually outside. Maybe this is like the fake lunar landing. It's like I don't actually believe that, but like it gets you to a sound stage, which is probably still underground, where they can stage whatever. Because I noticed what you noticed about the visor. We only saw the green through the visor. I noticed that his face looked distorted when we were looking at it from the outside through the visor, and it kind of looked like maybe that was a projection. Just like, maybe he's seeing like a LCD screen in the visor, and so it's showing whatever they want. The other thing that I thought looked really sus was the birds that went by looked exactly like the birds we saw on episode 1. They were going from the tree to the left-hand side in the same cloud, like V formation, same direction, same trajectory, same original point. And it's really tough to tell because we saw that shot through like her glasses. It was just a reflection, so we didn't have a lot to see off of it, but it kind of even looked like the same clouds in the background. So to me that looked like we're literally seeing the same sequence of events that this other person saw.
So I think, and this might be crackpot theory, it could be the visor, but he took the helmet off.
Yes.
And I think that when he goes into that like decompression chamber, they shoot him with a white gas. And I think that that is a hallucinogenic
Sleeping agent or a
hallucinogenic like death gas, and they figured out how to program that scene, because I thought it was the same scene too from what we saw of the cleaning. And so my theory is this hallucinogen gets them to clean every time. Like, it's fine outside, because also he didn't see his wife's body. When he came out, she was not on the ground, making me think that the hallucinogen kind of just covers everything up, and you see this recording that they have planted into people every single time, so they always clean the sensor so they can always see the dead bodies, so they'll never want to go outside.
Right. So this is more of that, like, getting people to do... So I didn't necessarily think it was hallucinogen as much as it was, like, what if you show them that it's perfect outside so that they think, like, I have to make sure other people can see this. You know? Maybe people don't know it's green because the sensor is so gross that it makes it look gray, you know? And so that's like a tool, because they make it very clear that when you go outside, we'd like you to clean, we're going to give you the tools to clean, but there's no way we can enforce it. It's up to you.
But they
and yet
always
everybody
clean.
Does it.
They always clean.
And maybe that's part of it, is like forcing them to see that greenness, which then kind of makes you wonder, like, where... And I don't have any answers to this, but, like, where would they be?
But see, that's why I still think it could be green out there, but I do think that they like make them delusional, because I feel like when he was talking about he had to clean that sensor, he was very much like he sounded like desperate. Like, to me, if he saw that it was clean and his wife wasn't there, I feel like he would have just gone over the hill to go find his wife. Like, his wife was the most important thing. He wanted to go find her. Not that he wanted to clean for people back inside. He wanted to go find his wife. And then he said Allison was right, and he seems delusional. And it's like, I have to clean. They have to see this. They have to see this. So it feels like that.
Yeah.
Whatever they spray in there, I think has to be something that makes them delusional. Okay. But that's my theory.
I could definitely see something like that. And I definitely think that whatever it is, like, they aren't out, I don't think. You know? Like, I don't know if they get brought back in after everybody's done watching, or, you know, like, I think that that's going to be part of the big surprise, is that, like, even when you ask to go out, you don't actually escape. Even if it is outside and it is green, the fact that they pass out means that they could easily collect them and bring them into a prison, or, you know, who knows what.
Well, for that part, I think the hallucinogen that they see, like, I think it's like a toxin that does kill them. So, like, every time they go out there...
You think those two are dead? Mm-hmm. Those... Okay, I kind of thought that, but I feel like there are very few shows that have had two main characters. This show has, like, two main characters, and both of those main characters are dead by the end of the second episode, and it's switching to a different cast. I feel like Game of Thrones has been the most risque show with killing off major characters, but even that has given them most of the season before it does anything.
Well,
so
I
That
don't
seems a little too.
I don't know if these are the main characters because I think the new girl Juliet is the new.
Okay.
I think she's the main character, and I think we might get flashbacks between these two, like between Allison and Holston.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll get flashbacks of them, of like why Holston decided to go outside after investigating. I think we're gonna get more of that, and maybe a little bit of when Allison was going to George more.
I think we're definitely going to see more of Holston because he told Juliet to keep her head down until he finds something, and when he finds something, he will give her the sign. Which means that there is a revelation that we're not aware of yet.
And the sign
because
was
I think
him.
the sign is that him giving her his possessions. Like, I don't think they're actually going to make her sheriff, but it said even if she doesn't accept sheriff, give her my possessions.
Right. Okay, so I definitely thought that was the sign from her, like getting the offer to be sheriff, and
yes,
I thought that was his giving the sign.
But there's that means that if he's sending the sign, that means that he learned something. So there's like a piece of information that he's discovered that we're not privy to yet. So I think we'll see that flashback at least. I don't think they're dead.
But my only hang-up is
we
saw the helmet. We saw the helmet pull off. He pulled the helmet off in front of everyone, and I feel like that's hard to recreate unless it's a soundstage.
So the only thing that I thought was really interesting that could lend credence to your theory is that when he collapses next to her body, he does actually accidentally nudge her as he's collapsing, and her body does move. Who knows? Maybe they've got really amazing like simulation, and so they can handle the kind of like graphics of you touching a fake person, not causing that fake person to move, but that is a pretty realistic thing to have to map out.
When I saw the birds, I thought it was the same scene as the other one.
Same scene. Mm-hmm. I had to like go back and because that, am I just reading into it? Am I like reading into tea leaves? Am I going too far?
No, because it is one specific tree.
I
and
agree.
The birds are right in its same spot, same amount.
Same spot.
So
yes. But I did go back to double check because I don't want us to just be like throwing out crazy ideas just because it's fun,
Right.
And it's like, so I wanted to make sure because that did feel like it's like a wild accusation, Like you better have some fucking evidence if you're gonna accuse them of that. All right, so why don't we talk about crime, punishment, and procedure? And I want to kind of jump in with judicial here.
Yeah.
Because I think we're going to see more of, like a lot more of judicial. And at least, and I know that this is technically cheating because it's based off of, who the actor is.
Common.
But when we see Common as one of the people in judicial, which means that, like, I don't think these are going to be people that we just see kind of on the side being the baddies. Like, these are going to be at least he is going to be a main person.
Yeah.
I think.
And great casting, because Common is just an intimidating person, and his, like, the like, deep voice that he has, it's very intimidating. So...
Yes.
I think this kind of goes...
It was very intimidating for the other people there. Like,
even the deputy.
You can see, like, the deputy couldn't really stop the altercation, but as soon as they came, it stopped.
See, that's why that is why I feel like the mayor, the deputies, and the sheriff, right. They're there to kind of like keep peace, but I think that they're not like the law there. They're just like
You're
a
right. You're right.
symbol
I know
to
you
try to
said
keep
it.
him. And
I I just
I
didn't like what like the mayor said in the beginning, and that kind of gave me those like creepy vibes. But I completely agree with you. I think she's a good person. I think Judicial is
because she
they're
doesn't
the
even
bad
want
ones.
a sheriff from Judicial, and Judicial's like, we're gonna put our guy in there.
Yeah.
Which I'm so curious of like how Judicial works, and I'm sure they're gonna flesh it out. But like the way that like how people become Judicial versus like it sounded like they picked a guy from Deputy to be in Judicial, and it was like better hours, better pay. So
Right.
I'm curious,
All you
like,
have to do is be a piece of shit, you know.
right? That's what I'm thinking. Like, you just basically have to sell your soul to the government and be like, all right, we're the bad guys now.
Here's an interesting crime and observation about it. Did you hear the comments about suicide?
Yes.
What I thought this was interesting because so the deputy finds out that she thinks it was murder instead of suicide, and he says something like, "If you're right, it'll save me a mountain of paperwork," which is wild that suicide would be less paperwork than murder. Then he also says that suicide is a crime against the silo,
Why?
and
Why do you
that
think
they're
it's a crime against the silo? I have a theory.
I, okay. I really I don't have like a great theory, but I do kind of I like your observation about the title sequence and the fact that like the people moving through are kind of the blood that like these are the blood of the silo. They are needed. Everybody is needed. It does seem like there's a steady pace of births, like 125 births, so maybe everybody is needed, and they can't have people axing themselves. And so in order to incentivize other people to rat out people that are going to suicide, they like teach them the signs and they make that one of the worst crimes.
Right. And they train to like look for the symptoms of it, like all
Right.
these like everybody, and like he says that, oh, he could have just been hiding it. Like we've learned all the signs to look out for from such a young age that people just know how to hide it. But I do think that they are like a colony of ants, and they all are needed to keep this thing going. Because
Oh,
here's,
colony of ants. I like that.
well, because see, in the title intro, like when you look, there's
Hmm.
one spot with the when it shows the spine, and it shows like they look like blood cells going through the
Yeah.
stairs. But then
Yeah.
later, there's like an X-ray view of it, and it looks like you can see most of the spine of the stairs, and you can see the individual people walking like ants. So it looks like an ant colony. But I think that they do such a good job of like teaching these people to like wrong things. Like think about
Yes.
Juliet's fear of the water. And what does she say? She says we sink and we can't breathe water.
And we can't breathe. Yes.
So I'm thinking they tell people, since there's no water in there, there's no ponds, there's no lakes, you might take a bath, but you can sink all the way down. I think they tell them specifically the water, they sink in water so that they don't go down and find that water.
And that you did kind of mention that, you know, that wording, and I do want to get into that in kind of a later point, but it does remind me of some other interesting wording that we see having to do with like crime and punishment, which is that the relics are color coded, you know, as to like their level of badness or severity or whatever. You know, so like a red level relic is the worst, and I'll kind of get into some ideas around this, some loose ideas around this, but that's a very simple coding system, you know, that's almost childlike in its ability to be able to differentiate the different kind of levels. But
do you think the watch was a green, like maybe a green relic? Because it was a legal relic.
Right. It probably that probably is what it is. I thought it was interesting. We got like a little bit of history. The fact that it's been 40 years of peace. So even since the rebellion,
40 years of peace.
The mayor says 40 years of peace down the drain. Like if they don't find the sheriff in time and there's a riot or whatever, there'll be 40 years of peace down the drain. And we know that since the rebellion has been, I don't remember, 140 years? 100 and something.
I thought it was like 144 years or something like that.
Something, yeah.
Yeah.
But she only said 40 years. So there's been events since then, which I think does kind of point to people's fear of these events coming back. That's why they're like buying the hammers and stuff like that, because they're worried about another one of these events, because that's happened in their lifetime they can remember. And the sheriff department is also worried about this, because like it's seared into their memory.
So there was something I noticed.
Okay.
I haven't seen the sheriff or the deputies carry guns. Okay. So
machining bullets might be...
Well, hold on. So there was one thing that we heard that I think a lot of people would probably miss. So they're talking about people are going to recycling. They're looking for pipes. They're looking for sledgehammers. Seems like they're about to, like, there's going to be a crazy riot. When Juliet goes to that mother-like tinkerer woman, she's listening to something. And I don't know if you heard what that thing said, but it said, either we have enough or we're running out of ammunition. What ammunition?
I mean, like, maybe that is rainy day stuff, where it's like, it's only used in case of emergency. That's not everyday...
I think she was listening to Judicial. I think Judicial has ammunition.
Ooh.
And so because as soon as Juliet comes in, she turns it off.
Which would make... And that's why Judicial would be so scary. Literally the only people that have guns... Because people don't seem super scared of, like, the sheriffs.
Right.
And that would be a piece of information that Judicial wouldn't want out, is that they're running out of ammunition.
I can't remember if it was running out or has enough ammunition.
Low or... Yeah, okay,
but
okay.
It does sound like they need ammunition for something.
Even saying that they have enough implies that there is a finite amount.
Yeah.
That's not, like, if you can make however much you need, that's not the kind of thing you say.
Yeah.
So I think either way, it either outright says or implies that there is an end to that.
Yes.
That's not the kind of information that they would want out, because then that's their power, that's their fear.
Right. And I'm curious to see what role that woman plays, because clearly she's listening in on things that she shouldn't be listening into with that ammunition thing.
Right.
So I'm excited to see where her little storyline goes.
Yeah, and Juliet was pretty comfortable opening up to her. I mean, not outright, because I think that she's, a somewhat private person, doesn't like to, but she did open up about pretty much everything.
And she said he was a liar. Why do you think she said he was a liar?
Because she didn't know that he has that signal planned out. Because he said, stay tight, don't get yourself in trouble. When I know new information, I'll send you a signal. And then she just watches him die on the screen. She's like, you promised. And she was like, she loved George, and she is actually being good and not trying to uncover more things about what's going on because he promised that he would do this thing, and then what does he do? He just goes outside and dies. It's like
Right. There. So
all
there.
this time after George's death just wasted. But she doesn't know that what we think that like that she is going to get the signal.
I had interpreted it in two ways. Either the signal one, but also I know that there was 3 months in between George's death and him walking out. Holston walking out. So I thought that maybe he already gave her the signal. They had worked together a little bit, and that he had told her that he had found that it was actually livable outside, and then he went outside and then she saw him die, and that's why I think she, because like she didn't, like she saw him instantly go out, like everybody was going up there, like she didn't see him go out and go like he's a liar right away. It was not until he died that she said he was a liar.
But maybe because like she was still hoping that he would send some kind of sign, and then like up until he died, and then once he died, it's like, well, he can't send a sign now.
Right. So I could interpret it either way. I could see either thing happening. But I do think I'm leaning more towards the he lied because she didn't get the message. Though I do feel like Holston has a lot more faith in Juliet. Like they weren't super buddies like by the end of it. You know, they only had that one meeting and he's already being like, she's gonna be sheriff. I mean, and
but I think that the fact that she renewed that like passion, and I think the big moment was when she told him, like he was getting ready to incinerate the hard drive, and she was like, you know, maybe if you'd listened to your wife, she would have been here.
Right.
And that's, I think that was his big moment of, he was looking into all of this because of his wife, not actually to help her and to find out what happened to George, but to see what the connections were. And finally, I think after all of this time, that clicked.
Well,
and she had been trying to tell him something for so long, and finally she felt like the only thing she could do was to go and promise to come back. And he's like, let me listen, let me think about what she said, and let me listen to that.
Okay. Deputy Marnes was talking to Holston about going out, or he was talking to somebody about Holston going out, and he said he was never the same after he met that woman, Juliet Nichols. And so I guess that could still work. That I thought they were going to have more interactions, him and Juliet. Yeah. But now I'm thinking probably not. He'll probably be doing his Scooby-Doo stuff upstairs, and she'll do her Scooby stuff above the water.
Who knows? Well, it's above the water. We'll see. Actually, speaking of language, let's talk about what we've seen with this society here.
Okay.
And that was actually one of the things I kind of wanted to chat about was language in this. I think it's interesting how changed these people are based off of the fact that they don't have books. You know, so it doesn't seem like this society is informed by historians, but that things are maybe passed on by word of mouth. And so there are certain things that sound very much like vernacular to me. You know, so there's like, that language sounds a little bit kind of like Mad Max. Not quite that bad. But, you know, we hear terms like the deep down, the before times, up top, and then that phrase that you mentioned, you sink in water and you can't breathe. Like, these seem like the kind of things that are passed on verbally versus like things that are read from books, you know?
We we did see the ledgers though. It does seem like the
But
mayor
those
keeps a ledger at least. Like whoever's in charge or the
those
mayor
are
at that
the
time.
only books I saw, and they're
Yeah.
handwritten.
Yeah.
That's not mass produced.
Right. It seems like only the mayor could probably read them. Like, it doesn't seem like anybody could just go in the mayor's office and be like, let me check out
Right.
volume 93, from 5 years ago. Like, that,
Right.
it does seem gatekeeped a little bit.
And so like that really like that ends up having like effects of like game of telephone, or more like colloquial names are used for things instead of historians or governments choosing, like nicer names. Like those just seem like very interesting kind of like combinations of words for
Hmm.
things. Like they seemed almost like the color coding, of like red level relic. Like they I don't want to quite call them juvenile, but like they don't seem like well thought, or
They almost seem like worker bees. Like, they're worker bees that are focused on their job or whatever job that they need to
yes.
do in the silo. And I think maybe, when they're young, they're trained not to question people because, like, or
Yes.
they're trained not to question authority because, like, it does seem like authority teaches them early on, like, hey, you got to look for signs of suicide in all your friends because it's a crime against the silo.
Right. Right. We
So,
we can't lose anybody. Like everybody has an important job here.
right. Oh, and they sanction relationships. So, like, that's like
Yes.
another thing where, like, okay, I said last week arranged marriages maybe, but close enough. Like, you have to get it approved.
Proved. Yes.
But who's approving it? Is it judicial? Is it up top? Be-
Yeah.
because when she shows him the gate into the where the big drill is,
Right.
she says up top probably knows about it. Not judicial.
Right.
Up top probably knows about it, and he
Top.
says,
Yeah.
I'm from up top, and we don't know about this. So, like, does also up top have a little bit more authority over the bottom?
It also kind of makes you wonder, like, does you know what happens if you aren't sanctioned for a relationship? Is that kind of like
They
the
said
it's
they said
easier
what
to ask
happens.
for.
They said what happens if they're not sanctioned.
Well, no, no, like if you applied to get it sanctioned,
Oh, and
as
it
in
got
like is
denied.
this one of those situations where it's like it's easier to ask forgiveness than to ask permission? So if
Hmm.
maybe if you don't get it sanctioned, yes, you don't have a bunch of rights, but maybe if you try and get a relationship sanctioned, maybe not all of them are approved, and once you like officially try and get like officially denied, that it could be a crime to spend time in that person's house, like that would make it very official that you can't be with that person, so
Right.
like maybe it's something like that where they think it's better to just keep it low and pretend it's not really a relationship and not get all the rights, but not like it does seem like there's a reason. Like he even asked the question, why didn't you get it sanctioned? She didn't answer it,
Hmm.
but there's
Right.
got to
Like,
be some distrust or something.
well, I think she probably didn't want it sanctioned because maybe they like do a deep dive into you, and she knew that he had all this like secret
Mm,
contraband.
maybe he didn't want it because like he doesn't want it coming back to, like he seems to be worried about certain things coming back to her.
Right. But then it also did seem that if you date somebody that's not sanctioned, you could get punished for that as well. So, and they said that you get sent down to the mines. What are the mines?
What are the mines?
And even George says, he's like, or she said, I'm not afraid to get sent out. They're not going to send us down the mines. And he's like, yeah, you're not afraid because you would be fine down there, tough girl. And I would just die. I'm a little computer geek. What are the
Yeah, I
mines?
forgot about that whole little section.
Yeah.
this place has some interesting history that's like slowly being teased out, you know? I'm interested in seeing what else is coming in, but like we saw some of that kind of history in the tunnels. I don't know if you were like looking at the graffiti
Mm-hmm.
when they were going through. I don't know if I can pull too much from the graffiti right now, but the one thing that I did think was very interesting was that there was a handprint that seemed like a child's handprint,
Ooh.
which like that seems if this is super off limits, you know, something you shouldn't go, maybe there's either a long history before it was off limits or a lot of people have been down it. There was a lot of graffiti, you know, so
Well, and also, how long have they been in the silo? Like, we know when the rebellion happened, we know, like, certain peace things, but, like, the way that they talk about that digger, they were like, oh, this is, has, like, over 100 years ago got picked, so it's probably been even
right.
longer than that. And we see that, like, so, like, maybe a bunch of people from the before times were trying to escape down below, and, like, they took kids down there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot to it. I did notice one graffiti of a nautilus shell,
Interesting. I didn't see that.
but that was not when they went through the tunnel. That was when they went to look at where George had fallen. There was a
Okay.
nautilus shell behind her.
I did see like one bit of graffiti that said like Dead Man's Hole. Another thing said like you die, and there was like arrows pointing down.
There was also one with a
Um.
giant eye looking down
Ooh.
up top, or judicial. I don't know.
Ooh. I did think there was an interesting connection that we saw kind of about history. So there are plenty of these, you know, dystopian societies that you see and you don't always know whether or not they really are in our world or not. But I think this one is solidly in our world because one of the little trinkets that she pulled out of the bag was the Statue of Liberty.
And a Pez dispenser, which is
And
very
it has
much
this, yes,
a very, I mean, commercial thing.
right.
So I think that was them saying, yes, this is in our world.
This is in, yes, exactly.
But how far from here is it? Because we saw that Holston and Allison were married in 26. So if this is our world, is it 3026? Is it 2126? Is it 2026? I think we're going to find out that it's far in the future.
I don't actually think we're going to find out when it is because I think that the calendar is going to be restarted with some major event. And so that could be like 126 or like 1026.
Yeah.
You know? Like I don't think that and I could be wrong on that. But I it's always interesting to me when like a movie chooses a date, you know, Back to the Future, 2001 A Space Odyssey, anything along those lines where it's like they really like they write they chisel in stone, you know, this prediction and it generally doesn't happen. So I kind of like this idea of the fact that like they did use kind of dates, but they just had the apostrophe, so we may never see what is to the left of the apostrophe, and that's
Right.
kind of my thought.
Just keep it ambiguous so you never know.
So yeah, and then you don't have people saying like, "Why don't I have self tying shoes? Why don't I have a hoverboard? Why am I not in space?"
How were
With
we
a
able
space
to build
baby.
a silo, a giant silo deep into the ground that could house so many people and basically be its
Right,
own society straight down in the ground?
right,
Maybe.
yeah.
But with that, I believe our journey has come to an end. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Next week, we will be doing Silo Episode 3. I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.